have pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. I know pandemic sounds like it was ages ago. During the pandemic, obviously, there was quite a number of, treatment situations that members or, people, employees, where they may not have gotten the care that they needed just because of accessibility to care during that time.
Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Zach Ewell, market analyst and podcast producer. Last spring, I had the pleasure to host several conversations at this year's Employee Benefits Leadership Forum in Colorado Springs. In fact, several conversations were so intriguing that we at Leader's Edge decided to turn them into a podcast mini-series. In this first episode of our conversations we had on the ground at EBLF, I talked with Jonathan Hsieh, CEO of Pacific Prime Americas, head of global networks and strategic relationships. A part of an international insurance brokerage company, Hsieh discusses how he got into the insurance business, how medical inflation and tariffs are impacting his clients around the globe, and popular benefit trends he has his eye on. Give it a listen. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. So my first question's a personal one. I'd like to know, and I'd like you to tell me about your journey breaking into the insurance industry. Did you always have an eye for risk?
Yeah, so I started the insurance industry actually from a very different angle.
Okay.
So my background's legal.
Oh.
And what got me into the insurance industry was I worked for a law firm with over 100 years of insurance background. So at the time, I was doing maritime law, so carriage of goods by sea, ship collisions, things like that. And one of my first jobs actually in Asia Pacific was working for that firm. And at that point in time, it was quite new in terms of insurers coming in, foreign insurers coming into places like China, for instance, and setting up for the first time. So it was a bit of a who's who of insurance carriers. So I won't name all their names due to confidentiality.
Sure.
But if you think about, the top 10, 20 insurance carriers in the world going into various markets throughout Asia Pacific, the firm that I worked for actually was supporting them with getting set up as obviously insurance license, their JVs, joint ventures, things that they were doing within the region. And so that was my first foray essentially into the insurance sphere, working on admiralty law, which is, if you go back historically, is some of the places where insurance got started in the world. In terms of carriage of goods by sea, having contracts for that, where big freights or shipments were being sent from one place to another, essentially. So international trade, essentially. And from there, I had an opportunity. I met. Put it simply, I met a few brokers within the industry at the time in China that was growing, and at the time we were growing at maybe, or they were growing at maybe 300 to 400% year on year. And it was an exciting opportunity because I had been in law since I was probably 16 years old. Working in various fields from public interest to the district attorney's office, and then obviously going into the private sector as well. And I saw it as an opportunity to help and contribute to a growing firm. And we had a ton of success being able to do that, and then transitioned into, I met Neil, our owner, our founder, global CEO still of Pacific Prime, and he was the first person I met that had a clear vision of how we can support our clients throughout Asia Pacific, the Middle East, and now I've been with Pacific Prime for over 10 plus years now.
Wow. Okay. Wonderful. A couple of things. The history and link between insurance and the sea, insuring ships. It's kind of funny, actually. A lot of times when I hear people that are just getting in the industry, they ask what inland marine insurance is. And it's like, actually, the transportation of goods via cars, because it's inland. But it's funny because, it started off as just marine insurance because it was marine, it was on the ocean. So Pacific Prime has a presence all over the world and recently opened offices in Australia and Southeast Asia. How do you juggle business in multiple markets with varying health insurance systems?
Yeah, I think it's quite dynamic. So it's a very, very exciting time for Pacific Prime, just as we're growing into new and developing markets, whether that's from Malaysia, Indonesia, Australia, adding on to where we're already present in for instance, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand, to the UAE in terms of Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and so forth. And so every country is a different dynamic when it comes to the employee benefits setup.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very important that we actually have specialists and a team on the ground to be able to support that expansion. There is a lot of work that's involved, especially when we work with multinational clients, where they need to understand, obviously, the dichotomy of their own benefits, whether that's out of the U.S. or the U.K., with how that differs from our regions in the world as they expand throughout Asia Pacific or even the Middle East. And so for us, we offer a pretty unique dynamic where we're giving real-time resource to clients regardless of where they are in the world.
Sure.
So essentially giving them knowledge of our areas a bit more in real time, depending on where the decision makers are based, whether that's in the APAC region or in the U.S., UK, etc.
Sure. Expanding a little bit more on international. So with offices and clients in many countries, I assume the geopolitics is a big concern for you lately. How has the geopolitical situation impacted your regions and clients?
Yeah, and that I know that's a topic that even more recently I think has come up, especially out of the U.S. with some of the tariff situations or uncertainties around that.
Yeah.
But what I would say is we've been dealing with geopolitical situations throughout the history of Pacific Prime, essentially, for our clients, obviously.
Yeah.
And when you look at the regions where we're in, there's China, there's Japan, there's Korea, there's countries throughout that region that operate as different countries with different systems, different strategies, whether good or bad, depending on your stance, I suppose.
Sure.
And what I would say is, we navigate that for our clients and understanding kind of what the local requirements are, how to adapt that to whether it's an employee benefit program or whether that's a risk management program, to help them understand the dynamics and then help them as they strategize their growth or adjustment in terms of other locales. So over the past 6-12 months, where perhaps there may be some perceived uncertainty, I would say, to put it nicely.
Yeah.
There's been a bit of a shift in strategies at times where they may go deeper into the Asia Pacific region, for instance, as opposed to maybe the U.S. or even other locales. Not to say that the U.S. isn't a very, very important market for every country, but there potentially are objectives when you have uncertainties where you may shift those dynamics to other countries where you have a bit more certainty.
Absolutely.
To put it kind of generally. And so as they grow within the Asia Pacific region, and one particular example is, we have one of the biggest offices for an insurance brokerage in Singapore. We've seen a lot of expansion into Malaysia, which is Kuala Lumpur is essentially a 30-minute flight from Singapore. And so you see a lot of clients with a lot of opportunities to invest. There's foreign direct investment going into those regions, setting up of plants, operations throughout Malaysia, Indonesia, places like that, where they feel is an opportunity. Sometimes it's accelerated those opportunities to have certain uncertainties, whether that's with the U.S. or elsewhere. And I think it's also offered an opportunity for certain companies to expand on their regional coordination and operations.
Yeah. Definitely. As you are aware, medical inflation, or for those that don't know, the cost of healthcare, is a big concern in the U.S. Is this also the case abroad? I'm assuming yes, but if so, what solutions have emerged?
Yeah, medical inflation is something that we're dealing with our clients day in and day out, essentially, with their populations throughout our regions, Asia Pacific, the Middle East, or even the world. Pacific Prime, we actually issue out every 1 or 2 years a report on medical inflation throughout the world. And so we are very close to that question you're asking right now in terms of trying to understand how things are evolving in terms of medical inflation. What I would say is in certain countries, so we have kind of pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. I know pandemic sounds like it was ages ago, but in reality, what we're dealing with post-pandemic is about a 2.5-3 year period of places in our areas where they had various levels of lockdown. And so during the pandemic, obviously there was quite a number of treatment situations that members or, people, employees, where they may not have gotten the care that they needed during that time just because of accessibility to care during that time. And so what you're seeing out of, that post-pandemic 3 years now for us is kind of a realization or assessment of those conditions that may be being caught at a different stage than they would have if the pandemic never happened, for instance. And so we're seeing a bit of a hardening market throughout Asia Pacific as well as the rest of the world, pretty much a global situation with carriers where they're seeing, spikes in utilization from outpatient to inpatient situations, more serious chronic disease management situations that need to be addressed, as well as, something like cancer care, which is, I think, critically important at what stage, you're able to assess or being able to identify or diagnose certain conditions. And so medical inflation is something we're always dealing with our clients to help them understand how their populations are utilizing their plans, how we build a more sustainable plan, what are some of the tools that we utilize in terms of helping them to manage or build that sustainable plan for the long term as opposed to 1 or 2 years. Those are, very, very important things. And what I would say for our regions is we've developed one of the biggest flexible benefit platforms in Asia Pacific as well as the Middle East to be able to help our clients have optionality of benefits for their employees, but also help in terms of managing costs around different types of treatments that their staff is going to need to utilize or have a better resource around being able to take care of your own health.
One country or region that, you have your eye on when it comes to emerging risk trends?
So when we look at Asia Pacific, we would say Singapore is one of the leaders when it comes to flexible benefits or implementation of flexible benefits. But what we can start to see that now is, flexible benefits moving into other markets like the UAE, maybe even potentially in China, provided that certain regulations allow for that. So each market is a little bit different, but we see an opportunity for employers to have a different strategy when it comes to just going beyond the traditional fully insured market.
Definitely. And then last question, kind of going back to personal, that was very fascinating learning how you kind of fell into the industry, if you will. What advice would you give to a young insurance professional who has recently entered our industry?
What I would say is very practical. It's put in the time to master your craft, right? And there's some things that you may or may not like doing, but it's important to understand, all the facets of what you're being assigned and the opportunities that are available. And once you have that experience level, from an insurance side, what I would say is the world opens up to you. This industry has given me an opportunity to be able to support clients throughout the world in various industries, not just, the multinational corporates, but, I had an interest in, for instance, sports and entertainment at times, which a lot of people can identify with, especially being out of the US. And it's giving me exposure to work with clients in different industries. And sometimes that's also, I guess, one of the big highlights of our industry is being able to work with people that have an immense amount of knowledge. And what I would say is, keep your level of enthusiasm for learning, and, you'll be given those opportunities as you grow. And there's always people that are willing to share their experience within this industry, especially our industry, and that have a specialist in different segments. And once you've at least shown kind of a mastery of some of the opportunities you've been given, you get more opportunities to learn in areas that would interest you even further. So, this is something I tell my son all that time, that thirst for curiosity or the curiosity that you have for learning needs to be lifelong. And I think if you continue learning, continue wanting to explore within this industry, you're going to find that there's so many different opportunities to do different things that, you can, that will build a lifelong career here.
That was my conversation with Jonathan Hsieh, CEO of Pacific Prime Americas. I hope you enjoyed it. To listen and subscribe to Leaders Edge podcasts, go to leadersedge.com or wherever you get your podcasts.